Hello guys, what is going on? SonOfChelsea back here again for my strongest England 11. I'm going to be covering England at the Euros this summer, hopefully reviewing more than just 3 games in the group stage, but of course in 2018 made it all the way to the semi-finals of the World Cup. Hopefully, in my case supporting England, we can get even further in this tournament, but it's going to be difficult and there are many big decisions for Gareth Southgate to make because he's got a very talented squad, but there are many debates around who should be in the starting 11, but also around the formation. So I'm going to give you my strongest 11 in today's video. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any of the uploads around the Euros this summer, and also my Chelsea content, keeping up with transfer news and other stuff as well. Hit that like button because it helps new people find the channel. Get involved in the comments, even if you're not an England fan but you are interested in the Euros this summer and following England or whatever it is. Get down in the comments, give me your thoughts about the tournament, the best England 11, all of that good stuff. Also, before we get going, I want to thank you, the sponsor and the supporter of my Euro content this summer, Following England Fanslide. It's a free-to-play fantasy football app, but it is a different type of fantasy football game. I'm not the biggest fantasy football player, I have to be honest. Like, I'm one of those guys at the start of the year that picks a team and then forgets about it after a week because, you know, the commitment and just sort of, I get quite tired of it. So the cool thing about Fanslide is, what I enjoy is there is no long-term commitment. You can just pick up the app, free to play. There's prizes to be won throughout this summer. And it's kind of strategic as well. You know, Opta stats are involved as well. It's in play. You pick players based on points to win you more points, to beat your mates. You can get your mates involved as well. So get down in the description box below. Use my link to help support the channel and download the app for free. We're going to have some cool things in collaboration with Fanslide on the channel this summer. So stay tuned, but download the app in the description box below. And thank you, Fanslide, once again for supporting the channel this summer. But let's get into my 11. There is so much debate around this, as there is pre every tournament, but given especially attacking talent in this tournament, I think that's what excites England fans going into the tournament with Southgate, and sort of the big conundrum for Southgate. I think as a general rule, I think firstly because of fatigue, because we're coming off the back of a very intense season, in particular in the Premier League. A lot of players in the England squad obviously have been involved with that. The intensity of the competition going right down to recent weeks, you know, Chelsea, Man City, Man United players involved in European finals as well, who are going to be heavily involved in the first team. I think you have to be pragmatic, unfortunately. I think a lot of England fans want to see every single attacking player out there, as many as possible that Southgate can fit, and just go for it in every game. I do think the exciting thing is, I think that Southgate in the group stage, I think can be flexible, and I think he needs to be flexible given the rotation. The big squad, he has 5 subs as well, really helps the larger squads with more quality, and there are many different options. But I'm picking a team in this video that I would play against Croatia, that I would play against more difficult opponents, in particular that last 16. If England get through either first or second, you're probably going to be playing a very difficult team like Germany, Portugal or France. So I think it's going to be a massive challenge for England this summer. So that's why I'm going for something more pragmatic, a 3-4-3. Obviously, as a Chelsea fan, I'm very used to this formation. It's worked wonders for Thomas Tuchel, and of course some Chelsea players can be involved this summer in the England starting 11. But I just think as well, my concerns over defence, without Harry Maguire, and even though he's back in training, I'm not sure how big a part he's going to play. No Jordan Henderson. We've taken injured players before that don't really have much involvement in the squad, to be honest, and the game. So I'm concerned about that. So I'm going to switch to a back 3 like Southgate used in 2018. He has tried a 4-2-3-1 and a 4-3-3. I think it's likely that he'll use those 2 formations in maybe 2 out of the 3 group games. I think against Scotland and Czech Republic, he may be a lot more offensive, and the players he rests and doesn't start in the opening game may feature then. So there's a lot of options, but this is my team. In goal, Jordan Pickford. I know a lot of people don't really rate Jordan Pickford for his performances at club. I actually think there's kind of this thing for years watching England. You watch players do so well for their clubs during a season, but then they reach the tournament in England and for a number of reasons, they don't perform to the same level. It seems to be the opposite of Jordan Pickford. For me, he turns into a better goalkeeper for some reason, and a more confident goalkeeper when he plays for England. You think about the amazing penalty shootout against Colombia. That's his best moment for England, but I think he had a really strong Nations League when England made it to the semi-final in that competition, made some big saves. And I just think generally he's a goalkeeper that Southgate has trusted, has backed over a number of years now. I think there are going to be players within this team that Southgate trusts, and I think that's something people need to understand about international managers. Sometimes it's not always about raw talent. I think they are going to go with players they know quite well. So I think Jordan Pickford will be in goal. The concern once again is his height and of course making errors during his career, but I think Pickford will be number one. The back three is going to probably, for me, without Harry Maguire, include two fullbacks because he's taken so many fullbacks in this squad. Firstly is Kyle Walker, who did play at right centre-back for Southgate in the World Cup in 2018, done well there. His speed, his offensive quality, I think in terms of an all-round fullback, I think he's probably the strongest in the Premier League consistency-wise. I think that in terms of his performances for Man City, winning the Premier League. But I also think for England, he's an experienced player in this squad. He's one of the older ones. I expect him to be a regular player in this team, whether he's at right back, whether he's at right centre back. So I think Kyle Walker will be a part of the back three if Southgate uses it. John Stones in the middle of that back three. I mean, John Stones about a year or two ago, I'm not quite sure if I would have bet he'd be a starter for England at this tournament. He's had a really strong season for Man City, keeping out Laporte, which I think is an impressive feat. And I do think you need that passing range as a sweeper in the back three. You need someone who's going to be dynamic, who's going to have the license to move forward, to find those passes into those attacking players. And I think John Stones can absolutely provide that. On the left of the back three, so you're thinking about Tyrone Mings here, who didn't really impress me in the warm-up games. I think works better in a back two. I think about, of course, Ben White being included very late on because of the injury to Trent Alexander-Arnold, but he is inexperienced despite the fact that he's a really talented young defender. I'm not quite sure if Southgate, not having White in his squad a lot, will trust him in these big games. So I actually think Luke Shaw will be the left centre-back in a back three because he has done this before for Manchester United and performed pretty well. He's come off the back of a really strong season for Man United, mainly in a back four, and it seems to be between him and Ben Chilwell for who takes that place. I'm not too fussed because I think both players have done really well and I trust them in either system, a back four or a back three. But I think especially for the Croatia game on Sunday, I do get the sense, and we've heard rumours, that Luke Shaw at left centre-back. So I'm going to go for him until Harry Maguire returns. I think if Maguire returns soon and is fit to go, I think it does change the options that Southgate has in defence. But defence is my biggest concern for England this summer. I think it's their weakest area, to be honest. Now we go into the right wing-back role. Of course, I'm a Chelsea fan, so I'm going to go with Reece James. But I don't really think there's an argument in terms of... I think Trippier has had a really good season for Atletico Madrid, of course, winning the Liga with them. But I think you need offensive quality. And I just think the performances Reece James has put in for Chelsea, in particular the Champions League final, an elite performance in the biggest game in club football. I also think his offensive quality is so needed creatively for England this summer. I think the crosses he can put in, because set pieces are a big part of international football. If you can win games, it's going to be fine margins. And I just think Reece's all-round game has developed so much this year at Chelsea as a right back, but predominantly as a right wing back for Thomas Tuchel. His speed, his strength to the way he uses his body, and at times even playing at right centre back. So if Southgate has some injury problems, I think Reece could fill in there as well. But Reece, for me, such a good player, it's developing so well at the moment at Chelsea, and I want to see him at right wing back for England this summer. The midfield too, there's some argument that if we were to move to a 3-4-3, Mason Mount would have to play in a double six alongside Declan Rice. I'm not quite sold on that because that's not where Mount's best position is, especially in this formation. I'm actually going to pair Declan Rice, who has been the best defensive midfielder in the Premier League, and as a Chelsea fan, I really want to sign him this summer. I think he's been so good, alongside Jude Bellingham. This is a bit of a risk because he is such a young player, but he's a confident young player, thriving at Borussia Dortmund in this position. I think once again, you want to be daring. I think we need to be set up in midfield properly to deal with transition, to deal with not having the ball. But I'd be so excited to see Bellingham, seeing how he's developed at Borussia Dortmund, a really good place to see him thrive. And once again, having more dynamic passes, braver passes in the middle of the pitch, both him and Rice, I think, can add that quality to get the ball into our more attacking players. So I think that both Rice and Bellingham could be a really interesting midfield too, whilst Henderson is still injured, and I'm not quite sure if Calvin Phillips has had a good season for Leeds, but I'd actually prefer Bellingham playing at a high level to me. Both him and Rice, I think, could be a really good midfield too. Ben Chilwell then, of course, would be left wing back with Luke Shaw at left centre back. Chilwell has been amazing. He hasn't been as consistent as Luke Shaw, But as a Chelsea fan, watching him develop under Tuchel, he had a really good start to the season under Lampard, but then faded sort of in the months before Lampard got sacked. And then when Tuchel arrived, and he sort of took the place of Marcos Alonso, and he's been in simply outstanding form, consistent form for so long now at Chelsea. And I think that him, once again, those overlapping runs, the acceleration, getting back and forth, so important for England. And he knows how to play in a 5. He knows how to bomb up the pitch and help in terms of offensive quality, creatively too. I just think Ben Chilwell all round is an excellent fullback, an excellent wing back as well, as he has developed for Chelsea. So I think he'll start these games. And then we get into the front three. And actually it's 2 positions. And I realised when making this list, when I was going to commit to a 3-4-3, I had 5 players to choose from to basically fill them into 2 positions. I mean, there are so many options here. Mason Mount, Jack Grealish, Phil Foden, Jadon Sancho and Marcus Rashford. If you're playing a 3-4-3, that's kind of these 2 behind, of course, Harry Kane. No surprise, of course, that Harry Kane is starting for England. I do just want to pick up here that I think that Harry Kane, of course, will be starting. He's England captain. He's a world-class forward. And, you know, you think that if England are going to win this tournament, it's going to be reliant on him banging in the goals for every game, how clinical he is for Spurs. I do think that Dominic Calvert-Lewin is a really, really strong option off the bench, especially once again, these fine margins, trying to make the most of set pieces, Reece James' crossing ability. England have got a lot of good creators, a lot of great players that can cross the ball very effectively and very strongly into the box, into the dangerous positions. And that's where Calvert-Lewin can thrive, especially heading the ball into the back of the net. So I think Calvert-Lewin as a sort of a B option to Harry Kane, I think is a very strong one to have in the squad. But of course, we know the world-class Harry Kane will be starting for Gareth Southgate. The 2 behind him, I think Jack Grealish, I absolutely love Jack Grealish. I mean, in terms of non-Chelsea players, he's one of my favourite players to watch. Just the way he glides across the pitch, his intelligence, the way he wins fouls, attract defenders, makes so many good movements within the game. You know, he can start on the left, but we know how freely he can drift in and around the pitch. And I just think he's a dangerous player. He's a creative player. He's a player that is going to make magic moments happen. And I think it's on Southgate to be daring enough to give him that license. There's still doubt whether he'll start the big games, and he may go for someone like Sterling that he's trusted, but I think on form, I don't think there's much competition, and I think you want players in the tournament who are going to find those key passes, those individual moments of brilliance, and I think that's what Jack Grealish can give you. Mason Mount, of course, being, you know, biased for Chelsea, having him in the back of this top right here, he's been and I'm going to say this, I think he's been world class for Chelsea this year. I mean, he's been Chelsea's best player, you know, playing the pass that wins Chelsea the European Cup, but he's quite clearly become an essential player for Gareth Southgate. And I also think defensively, Mason Mount is very key in these games. When England don't have the ball, I think it's very key that Mason Mount is on the pitch pressing from the front in a 2, like he does for Chelsea, where he can sort of drop in as well to a midfield 3, and you could sort of see a front 2, and gives, you know, I think Southgate a lot of options. But the intelligence of Mason Mount, the creativity of Mount, the way he finds pockets of space and drives forward, particularly on that left, and I think the way both him and Grealish could sort of move in and out of positions, I don't think they're getting each other's way, and I think Mount's work rate too is so important. This is not a luxury player, this is someone who works for the team, and I think tactically is so important in the bigger games to press the more dangerous players that we're going to come up against, say against France, Portugal, Germany, especially in the Croatia game as well. That was a big problem back in 2018, and I think the likes of Modric, the likes of Kovacic, I think Mount can definitely press them a lot more and hopefully win the ball high up the pitch to start attacks. So that is my 11. I know many people are going to disagree. I know many people would want to get more attacking players on the pitch, the likes of Jadon Sancho, the likes of Marcus Rashford, the likes of Phil Foden as well. The great thing is I think 5 subs, a bit like in the club game we've seen, really helps coaches out, and is going to give Southgate a lot of time to rotate and bring these players in. I wouldn't be at all stunned if he starts with a 3-4-3 in the first game and then switches to a 4-2-3-1. Hopefully England can put the best foot forward in this tournament. I'm very much expecting a lot of hope and also a lot of heartbreak. That has been the sort of story of watching England in my life, so I wouldn't be too surprised if England get knocked out early, in particular the last 16 where we could be facing France, Germany or Portugal, and I think it's also the psychological battle with England of getting past one of those teams. If they could, then I think England could potentially go all the way to the final, where I think they probably get beaten by France, because France are my pick to win the Euros, unsurprisingly. But let me know your opinions on the video today. Give me your lineups in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this video. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Follow me on Twitter at SonOfChelsea, and I'll see you again.